Hello, in this video I'm going to give you your feedback on week 7's chapter discussions, which were about Jeffersonian America. The first question was, how and why did Jefferson and the Republicans move away from their ideals and embrace more federalist policies? Their ideals were in having a weak federal government and a society based upon the agrarian sector, on farmers, particularly small farmers, whereas the Federalists believed in a stronger federal government and a stronger financial sector, including federal support for merchants and manufacturers. One example is the Louisiana Purchase. Jefferson, in order to pull this off, required a strong federal government. He required a doctrine that said the federal government had the right to decide on behalf of the United States to acquire more territory. He wanted Louisiana partly for strategic reasons, for example, to have access to the Mississippi, but also in line with his belief in an agrarian republic. This required land for people to settle in order to avoid too great social inequalities occurring within the settled lands. If people can keep moving westwards, there will always be land to maintain this society of small farmers. Then, on the issue of the judiciary, Jefferson found himself in conflict with Federalist appointed judges. In order to stand up against the Supreme Court, again, this required a belief in a strong federal government, which was contrary to Republicans' traditional beliefs. And then the war with Britain and France, or the war between Britain and France rather, and the fear that America would get drawn into it, also required a strong federal government. The Embargo Act, which was designed to boycott both Britain and France, was another example of a federalist type ideal, that the federal government should take a role in the economics of the United States. As for why the Jeffersonians did this, well, put simply, once they occupied federal government, they suddenly discovered a belief in the need for a strong federal government. It's easier to preach small government in opposition than when you are the government. The second question was, what were the causes and consequences of the War of 1812? By 1812, Britain and France had been at war with one another for nearly 20 years, and America constantly feared being dragged into this war. Eventually, they found themselves drawn in against the British. This is caused by the impact of the war on American trade, American neutral shipping being harassed by both Britain and France, and specifically Britain impressing, that is, forcing American sailors to serve in the British Royal Navy. There were some closer to home issues, such as pressure in the Northwest, rising conflict between the United States and indigenous tribes in the region, which the United States blamed, probably wrongly, on some kind of British-backed plot to raise the native tribes against the United States. The consequences, well, in terms of consequences on a map, nothing much changed. The war was essentially a draw and no territory changed hands. However, the United States emerged with a sense that it could stand up to Great Britain. It was sometimes nicknamed the Second War of Independence because the United States has successfully resisted British forces in North America. And then it gave a sense of American national pride. The discussion in the source-based questions about the Star-Spangled Banner is a good example of this. America emerges with a stronger sense of national identity. The people who really lost out from the War of 1812 were the Native Americans, most notably in the Northwest, where Tecumseh's uprising was defeated, but also similar things happened in the southern states as well. Without Britain as a potential ally, the Native Americans were more at the mercy of America's westward expansion. The third question was, what was the era of good feelings and why did it not last? The era of good feelings is the name given to the period, particularly under Monroe's presidency after the War of 1812, when partisan differences were softened, perhaps even disappeared entirely. The Republican move towards federalist policies meant there was little difference now between the two parties, and the Federalists basically just disappeared. Also, the War of 1812 left a good feeling of national unity. The reason it didn't last, well, there was economic difficulties, the crash of 1819, and also the Missouri issue, the question of whether Missouri should be let into the Union as a slave state or a free state. And the broader question of how was slavery going to be dealt with, particularly with westward expansion, was very divisive, led to the Missouri Compromise of 1820. But as we'll see in later weeks, this compromise did not last, and the question of slavery was going to come back far more violently in the future.